Good evening. This is Defacto Review, a weekly analysis on current news affairs in Mongolia by economist and columnist Mr. Khuvsgul.
Good evening.
He'll be with us from abroad today, and I'm your host, Khuvsgul. Today's topics include Khuvsgul Lake registration in UNESCO, tourism, and inflation in Mongolia. It's at 16% right now. Going on to our first topic on Khuvsgul Lake. It has been added to the World Network of Biosphere Reserves of UNESCO. The decision has been made during the 34th session of the International Coordinating Council of the Man and Biosphere Program taking place in Paris, France. Its main mission is to foster harmonious integration of the people and nature for sustainable development. Just to mention a few facts on Khuvsgul Lake, it is located in the northern Mongolian province of Khuvsgul near the Russian border and is one of the most visited tourist destinations. It's the second largest freshwater resource in Asia that holds nearly 70% of Mongolia's freshwater. Now, my question to you, Mr. Khuvsgul, is that now that Khuvsgul Lake has been added to the UNESCO list, making it the 9th biosphere reserves in Mongolia, are there any other sites you'd like to wish to include? Or first of all, what are your thoughts on the Khuvsgul Lake registration? What does this mean for Mongolia?
Well, registration itself sounds good. It is good. It means that because this UNESCO thing is about to foster integration of the people and nature for sustainable development. And at least it will make sure that the government and Mongolian people do the same integration. Is it integrated today? Not so much so. Why? Because there are so many camps around the Khuvsgul Lake, and only summer, thousands of thousands of people visit, and not visiting in winter. That makes completely quite depending on season, that tourism. And there are not enough, say, even proper restrooms, tons of waste staying after the tourists leave. And at times there were even no ATM. The supply system was not working well. And hopefully after this registration, things will be more in order to the international standard, hopefully. There was a forum about Khuvsgul Lake and local development recently in the Ulaanbaatar city. The governor of Khuvsgul Aymak, Idir Baysalan, said at that forum that by the end of last year, 2021, there was a 7,000 people's capacity, 94 tourists camp, 132 gear camps, and there are hotels in the city Murum, the center of Khuvsgul Lake, and from that Murum, another couple hundred. From that Murum is the way the airport is, and there are 390 total person capacity 8 hotels and 15 resorts. That's the whole total capacity of the Khuvsgul Aymak and the Khuvsgul Lake place. However, there was a 56,000 tourists last year in this area. And those concerns I raised are existing, and they need kind of checking points, ecosystems, and also at the same time, it's a matter of local development or increasing income of local people. All this comes together at this time with this UNESCO registration. Out of this 54,000, only 13,000 were foreign tourists. So in total, this is a picture how many thousand people were coming to the Khuvsgul Lake, and whether they have capacity or not, to keeping constantly a big inflow of people at very short time. So there are a lot of things to do, and a lot of things also to protect nature and to be very careful for the ecosystem of Khuvsgul Lake. So that's the picture of Khuvsgul Lake tourism development. Only problem here is the winter tourism development. There is some try on that, some winter ice festival, etc. But we need constantly coming more amount of people also in the winter to justify investment, business investment required for the development of Khuvsgul Lake. So that means that may include, for example, down the road, ski resort. Khuvsgul Aymar, the south mountain, has a huge, large mountain, even maybe higher than Bogda Mountain in Ulaanbaatar city. And that has a good possibility of developing winter tourism. So only combined winter and summer tourism together makes the sense to have reasonable sounding tourism in Khuvsgul area.
Mm-hmm. You've just talked about in terms of tourism and its development during also the winter time on top of summer. Could you elaborate a little more on what this means for our economy, the registration of Khuvsgul?
Mongolia depends honestly on mining business. And the second one, construction. And the third, we hope it would be tourism, which will be a good addition to the, diversifying our economy. That's why motorists, if they come from to Khuvsgul Lake, it means to Ulaanbaatar, they come by plane. And it's a matter of also having more flights, etc. And we can talk about the tourism more details afterwards.
Great. Now let's move on to our next topic on tourism. On Tuesday, the Tourism Council of the Mongolian National Chamber of Commerce and Industry gave a briefing to journalists on current tourism in Mongolia. The World Tourism Organization has studied the recovery of tourism and factors that are influencing recovery. The survey showed that 43% of the people surveyed expected tourism to recover this year, and 45% said it would revive next year. Chairman of the Mongolian Tourism Council, Mr. Barspot, reported foreign tourists will not increase significantly because of flight costs, poor service, limited HR, and lack of international marketing in the policy. He added that Mongolia is losing dozens of tourists this summer because authorities still have not provided any information on visa requirements for tourists and services to be provided in case of another wave of COVID-19. There was a news headline not long ago that said over 42,000 tourists arrived in Mongolia, indicating a rise in tourism and a development in the tourism sector. And this is a relatively high number compared to last year. But according to the Mongolian Tourism Council, tourism is not doing well and cannot do so unless we target foreign markets. Do you agree with this? If so, how can we target foreign markets?
Yes, there are several factors we have to pay attention. First is airlines, domestic and international flights. Secondly, the domestic movement of tourism are becoming expensive due to large territory. And many tourism destinations are staying very far from Ulaanbaatar city. And for this big country, we very much require good domestic flights, maybe it's called general aviation, maybe a smaller plane instead of, say, by bus. In particular, to the off-road, it's not that easy to drive very far in Mongolia. The third is other tourism infrastructure, where to stay, where to have a lunch, where to have a restroom, etc. And the third is our statistics to be very exact, more clear on who is tourist, who is not. I believe this 42,000, it includes neighbors coming to the country, and some of them, if those staying for a couple of days more, they are regarded as tourists, etc. But there is a lot of things to do with the statistics here to make it more clear. On airlines, the government have decided last week that they will give a money loan to 4 billion MNT, which is around 2.5 million US dollar, to MIAT, Mongolian National Airlines, for their flight increase to Ulaanbaatar Frankfurt destination, which I was on last week. And now, due to sanction in Russia, we don't fly. MIAT is not flying over Russia. It goes over south of Russia, which extends the flight even more for 3 hours instead of 8 hours. Now we are flying 11 hours, 70 minutes, which is very expensive. That's one of the reasons why also this time the price for airline is increasing so much. Now, with the help of this money of the government, they will fly not like 2 times as today. It will fly 5 times a week. It's a substantial increase. It is these 5 flights are for July, August, and September. Recently, also, Mongolian Airlines have bought back the Boeing 767, which was on lease, and the airline had bought it now. I don't know whether economics here better or not. Many airlines just lease the airplanes, not buying. But our people saying that it's cheaper. Anyway, Mongolian Airlines is, of course, not most efficient airline because state-owned, because the executives are changed frequently. And the critics saying that it's only 3-4 airplane, you have more than 1,000 staff is too high. So it is to be really restructured so that it is working more competitive, and also not very much monopoly should be existing there, which makes the monopoly makes the price more higher. And nowadays, with Aeroflot is not flying, so to the Europe, only Turkish Airlines and Mongolian Airlines fly. That's one of the reasons why they have to increase that flights to Frankfurt online. The other thing is tourism infrastructure. We need to build, say, on major highways from Ulaanbaatar city, well, highways, not the international standard highways, but on those roads coming from Ulaanbaatar to main directions, for every certain kilometers, say 100 kilometers or 100 or 50 kilometers, we need to make even a complex rest place for every passenger. And the third is in a tourism camp, there should be one standard, in particular standard for hot shower. The pressure of water, the food, all these things should be really making happy the tourists after a long day. So not for frustration. So this kind of development is to be made. I think this one is made only through competition. So in every place there is a two. However, also in small area to make 2 camps are too expensive, and they are just price competing by price, which is killing at the end both businesses. So there are this kind of problems. Certainly Mongolia will be back on tourism. Maybe it's next year, but anyway, these problems we have just now described to be somehow addressed properly beforehand, because it is not just one summer issue. So it's a long time we need to prepare and to make really very much guest friendly.
You just mentioned about the infrastructure of Mongolian Airlines and the flight cost. What do you think about targeting foreign markets to develop this sector, as the Council mentioned?
It is a matter of cooperation with the other airlines. It is also a matter of competing so that the price goes down. For Mongolian Airlines to compete is very hard. For example, with Korean Airlines, which has thousands of planes, Mongolian has only few. And so per capita, per seat cost of airline is very expensive in Mongolia. But though we have another 4 to 5 private airlines, and those airlines also to fly on those routes that Mongolian Airlines fly, which usually are not permitted. That's the monopoly issue. That's why if they are competing, I think things will be in related places first. Secondly, we need to develop more products, not only the nature, nomadic culture, but there should be something inside of Ulaanbaatar city entertaining more tourists. And the culture of theaters, philharmonic orchestra, etc., all those, the schedule to be very clear, not only for summer, but in winter is to be clear for next summer. Every service is scheduled to be there, and all the restaurants, names, menus, everything is to be much beforehand accessible to tourists.
Yeah.
These kind of things. Also, the other issue is also matter. Another matter is guide issue.
Guide.
And the largest thing is the sign in the streets, all entertainment, all offices, all signs in Ulaanbaatar city. Once it's international city, then it's to be in Mongolian and in English, so that people understand. And of course, what the Ulaanbaatar city infrastructure to be more, not only a lot, but also to be clean, streets to be should be green so that people feel comfortable. So many things to be made there.
Yeah. Great. Okay, let's move on to our final topic on inflation. We have a report on Mongolia's social and economic situation released by the National Statistical Office of Mongolia. And as of May for this year, prices for consumer goods and services increased by 15.1% from the same period last year. And inflation is at 16.2% as of late May. To mention some more specific detailed statistics, food and beverage prices account for 35.1% of inflation. Prices of transportation increased by 25%, food by 18%, meat by 6%, and non-alcoholic drinks by 25%. Hotels and catering services prices increased by 16%, pharmaceutical services by 16.1%. What is your thoughts on this, Mr. Jarosakhan?
Well, this is a concern of everybody, of course. Inflation is not only killing your income, but also it also makes, in Mongolian case, for example, at the beginning it was supply-related inflation. Now it's come to demand. The major impact for this big inflation is, first of all, major drivers of the inflation is, first of all, food. This is all around the world.
Yeah.
Second, food. Third, the exchange rate, which impacts on prices for import goods. As import goods have become more expensive to buy in Mongolia in 2 weeks, as exchange rate deteriorating for Mongolia in 2 weeks. So what do the government doing, or the Central Bank of Mongolia doing, is they are increasing the policy rate. They have increased last week again, third time this year, by 1%. Now it is 10%. Okay? And why are they increasing that policy rate? Because, first of all, inflation. Second, because the exchange rate. Speaking about the exchange rate, there is a current account of Mongolia. How much money goes out, how money goes each, comes in, what the difference in between them. Then in April, that deficit of current balance is 1.5 billion US dollar. So we spend that amount of money more than we earn money. So that's why the Mongol Bank had restricted, well, commercial banks rather, have restricted, you can buy only for 1 million MNT, US dollars or other currencies, not more, a day. Even you have in your account a lot of money, you cannot buy more than for 1 million MNT. That's commercial banks. That's one of the reasons, because reserve in the country is shrinking. That's why they have to increase that policy rate. The other one is the situation in Russia. That impact on whole world, and the U.S. Federal Reserve Fund have increased their policy rate 0.75 unit percentage. And that impacts all around the world for money supply, because now it's more, if you take trillions of dollars, keeping in Federal Reserve account is more profitable than they give the loan. So that's the other reason, international reason.
Inflation in Mongolia is higher than the global inflation right now. How does this look like in the future? What can we do in Mongolia?
Well, yes, we have this inflation at the level of 16%, and it is one of the highest, but there are some places even higher inflation, but it's already very high. More than 10% is really high. So we should make sure that it does not increase anymore. And it's a matter of increasing supply. And also it's a matter of not too much putting into the economic system a lot of money, which is not deserved or which is not supported by the supply, production. And it is particular concern about the government big program, 10 trillion MNT for recovery of the economy. This is coming a lot of money to the economy, and the production is not yet increased because the money is just coming in, and at the same time this exchange rate increase is happening. So it is not that easy. But only thing with the inflation is to cut costs, and it is in a country like Mongolia where people used to have a lot of government support, social care. For the government, it is not that easy to stop it or to decrease it. So we will be in that situation for quite some time until the government cuts certain costs. In particular the money that goes just as social care. So social care is to be really very much addressed, targeted, and this money should go to people who really needs help, not to everybody like today. So it is a bit government policy change issue.
Great. Now that wraps our 3 topics for this week. Thank you, Mr. Jarasahang, and thank you for watching. We will see you next week.
Thank you very much. See you next week again.